Johnny, folks.
Johnny, thanks for coming down. I know you're in intensive rehearsals for the big Horse Lips reunion coming up in December, 2 big gigs in Dublin and Belfast. How's that going, by the way?
Well, actually going very well at the moment, yeah. Spent the last, pretty intense for the last week, and out in Rathcoole. But it's going very well, yeah.
What does it feel like to be doing this after, 29 years?
Yeah, it's great actually. We had a kind of a few sort of dry runs in the last couple of years. Like we did the first time we got together really was when we did the Ordawn show, TG4, and that was the first kind of electric get back. We were doing a couple of acoustic things before that, you know. So it was kind of leading up to sort of getting around to doing like some big shows, I think, really, you know. But it's lovely.
And these really are big shows. You're doing the O2 in Dublin and the Odyssey in Belfast. I mean, you're not starting small, are you?
No, actually, no. I think we were going to have a dry run up in Drogheda, I think, is before the. But it's not, but by no means, you know, so they're not small gigs, yeah.
Okay, so that's all happening in the near future. Can I bring you right back? You were telling me earlier on that you started playing guitar at the age of 10.
I started kind of in the late 50s. I grew up in Limerick and Shannon and Clare, you know, and the late 50s, like the rock and roll sort of kicked in around 1955 or 56, like Presley, and the first thing I became kind of aware of was sort of Heartbreak Hotel, Jailhouse Rock, you know. It was the like rock and roll exploded. It was actually I think it was a radio station where Radio Luxembourg, and used to sort of at night, you know. But it was actually the guitar player, Scotty Moore, was the one that sort of caught my ear at that time, you know. So it sort of started around that time, yeah. I think it was probably about 8 or 9, and I started playing.
And your dad brought a guitar home one day?
Yeah, he did actually. He used to work in Shannon Airport, and he knew a chap there who had an acoustic guitar, and did a bit of a deal with him, and you know, brought the guitar home. So I started tinkering around like from there, kind of thing, yeah. And when we moved to Shannon, actually, it kind of kicked in a bit more with the about 1963, the Beatles. Really, that's what really sparked it off, you know. Like the Beatles, that's what.
I mean, can you remember the first song you ever played or the first chord you ever tried on the guitar?
Well, I think I might have tried to bang out Jailhouse Rock or something on the acoustic, yeah. I think it was possibly, yeah. And then, as I said, like with the Beatles, when, you know, trying to learn like the Beatles songs were fantastic, you know.
And there was the whole trad ballad boom happening at the time, and you got a little bit into that as well.
Yeah, there was. The Clancy Brothers were sort of like in 1960, 61, they were absolutely huge, you know. I think they were the ones who were kind of getting played on the radio all the time. And I was at school. There was a teacher at school actually who was a huge fan of the Clancy Brothers, and he played a bit of guitar, and he used to have this kind of a music thing once a week, and you could kind of bring in your own. So I had this like £3 Spanish guitar, and I sort of brought it in, and you know, he would play some Clancy Brothers stuff. So the ballad, you know, it was that kind of Clancy Brothers stuff, you know. That was but I think it was more the Beatles, like, you know, the Beatles happening. That sort of I was drawn to that side of it more than the kind of ballad thing, you know.
And somebody showed you how to play the chords. Was it "Love Me Do" or "Please Please Be With Us"?
Yeah. There was a chap living in Shannon. It was an English chap actually, and he sort of knew. Before, I think it was "Love Me Do" or something like that. You know, one of the first Beatles songs, and he showed me like the kind of chord shape. That was the major breakthrough, you know, with the E minor to A, wherever it was, you know. So that was the first real. It was actually learning those first few chords was you know, like really kicked it off, you know.
And when did you start playing with other musicians? I mean, was that early on?
I got to know a couple of lads in Shannon. About a year later, I managed to get my first electric guitar, which I think was in 1987 or something like that, one Christmas, but I think it was 1964. At that stage, the Beatles, like really the Stones, the Beatles, the Kinks, the Yardbirds, like they were all, the Animals were another one of my favourite, you know. They were like happening big time. and there was a couple of lads around. Used to come out. As a matter of fact, they used to come out from Limerick. There was a hall in Shannon, and they were allowed to rehearse there every Sunday. So I kind of formed this bit of a group with them, you know. We used to kind of rehearse up in the hall and just do all our favourite songs, like, you know, the ones that we knew and the ones, you know, learned the ones, mainly from records, you know. We learned.
And can you remember the first ever gig you played, or is that?
I think it might have been a small dance in Shannon or something like that, you know. It was actually there was a big in those days in the mid-60s in Limerick had a great beat singing, you know, going. They had all the clubs like the Go-Go and the Cavalier that they had in Dublin. I mean, it was the same, you know, but it was happening in Limerick as well. So it was Limerick was pretty hip, like in the mid-60s. And I think it might have been one of the clubs in there that we managed to get a gig. Like I remember seeing, actually, it's fantastic, seeing the People, Henry McCullough, and there was a lot of bands coming down from Belfast to play in Limerick as well, you know. And that was great to see Henry with the People, you know. So it was more or less like that kind of scene that was going on, and that kind of thing. You know.
Did you decide at one point that this was the life for you? You were going to be a musician, a guitar player?
Yeah, I think it kind of pretty much, you know, it was kind of decided that, you know, I thought this is probably what I will be doing for the rest of my life. You know. I did the usual like schooling and went to intermediate, past the intermediate, but I think it was really like, it was music that was always, as a voice is on my mind, you know. It was always there, so it more or less kind of dictated it.
Okay. Is there anything you can remember from back in those days that you used to play that you still play occasionally, or are there any songs or riffs that you kind of?
There is actually a couple. I mean, I occasionally do like The King She Really Got Me, you know, like.
I think I'd like to hear a bit of that.
Yeah.
If you can remember.
You got me so I wanna do it. Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I can see, but now you really got me. You really got me. You really got me.
When did you first come up with the idea of blending, rock, pop, guitar with traditional? That's something that happened by accident, or did you?
It was kind of. I was very like around 65. I started getting into playing blues guitar. You know, a lot of blues guitar. That was more or less blues guitar became my style. Kind of from then on, you know, from like 64, 65. Listened to the great blues players, and I started getting interested in traditional music around 1968. It was always, because I lived in Clare, like, and grew up, it was always there, but I hadn't taken a huge interest in it, you know. But I started learning tenor banjo about 1968, and I was learning jigs and reels and going to sessions in Clare and that, and I started sort of using melodies and lines from jigs and reels on the guitar. So just kind of went from banjo guitar back to, you know, and that's more or less kind of how it came about.
And all that was quite new back then. I mean, people weren't doing that, mixing up trad and rock and that sort of thing.
I don't think that, I mean, I can't remember anybody at that time, you know. It was even I suppose I kind of had the idea kind of leading up to when Horslips broke big, you know. And when I heard Horslips for the first time, it was amazing.